episode from Your Own Pathway Therapy Conversations. And here we speak on the topics that we've been conditioned to stay quiet about and the ones that rock the boat. But here, nope, we're not protecting the silence. We're breaking it. So let's own it. Today's episode is for any of my fellow therapists, social workers, or anybody else who has job hopped a lot. And this episode today is really about how job hopping has been a positive and education for me because it's really allowed me to see things that I would not have if I had stayed in one system. And I really want to do this episode for anybody who especially has been shamed, judged, or made to feel like something was wrong with them because they job hopped. I want to start there first because I moved around a lot and I started working back in 2008. I actually got my job in the economic crisis of 2008 and luckily I was able to get a job. And so I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, so for 18 years. And I moved around a lot in these 18 years. And I'm definitely not here to shame anybody who has also had a path where they have had to jump around a lot. In all of this, what I have understand is that yes, some of my movement came from searching. Some of it came from really trying to find alignment. And some of it came from knowing that something was off. Even if I didn't fully have the language for it yet. And eventually I realized that alignment was what I was looking for. And that I wouldn't find alignment unless it was something that I created myself. But in that movement of all my movements, I learned a lot. And I've worked in the federal systems, at the VA system, I've worked at the state systems, I worked at county level government programs, I worked in hospitals, I worked and saw how outside pressures like payer sources and larger systems really shaped the care of how people received, the care that people receive. I've worked in private practice, and that place taught me something different. Different titles, different buildings, different leadership, different cultures. But over time, I started noticing something else. A lot of the patterns were the same. Yes, different system, same issues. Different workplace, same fractures. Different leadership title, same similar harm. And what some people might call job hopping, I now understand differently. What it did for me was it really trained my eye and it helped me understand systems. It helped me understand systems within the leadership, the power, and the impact organizations have on people. So today's episode is what I want to talk to all of you about today. So moving on, um, I want to start out with, being an older millennial and having boomer parents. We were taught that, that you stay in one place, that a very specific story about success. Stay in one place, be loyal, climb the ladder, keep your resume clean, and don't try to move too much. And if you do move around too much, people start assuming things. Maybe you're the unstable one, or maybe you're difficult, or maybe you can't commit, or maybe the problem is you. But the thing is, a linear career path is not the only valid path. And staying is not always the same as thriving. Sometimes people stay because they're growing. Sometimes people stay because it's healthy. Sometimes people stay because it works for them. But sometimes people stay because they're afraid, because dysfunction became so normal, because leaving feels like failure. The story is more complex than that. And it's definitely more complex than what we were taught. Sometimes the person who moved the most also learned the most. So, what did moving across systems taught me? Once I stopped seeing my path through other people's judgments, I understood what it had given me: comparison. And comparison is powerful because when you've only known one environment, it's easy to think this is just how leadership works. This is just how organizations operate. This is just part of the job. But when you moved across systems, you start to see what is specific and what is repeated. And I saw leaders who created trust. I saw leaders who created fear. I saw cultures where honesty was safe. And I also saw cultures where silence was safer. I saw teams that were supported, and I've seen teams carrying preventable burnout. I saw values written on the wall in their philosophies, and I've seen values ignored in practice. That kind of exposure really sharpens you. And it definitely sharpened my clinical judgment. It sharpened my understanding of systems. It sharpened my ability to tell the difference between an individual problem and a systems problem. What systems really taught me as a social worker and therapist was that when we talk about systems, we focus on how they impact clients and patients. And a lot of the work we do, as we should. A lot of us, do jobs, especially therapists and social workers, where patient care is the priority. Patient and client care is a priority. But the thing is, systems also impact the people working inside them. And I didn't just observe dynamics, I experienced them too. I saw how policies land on staff. I saw how leadership decisions affect affected morale, how burnout becomes so normalized, how emotional labor gets often so overlooked. And in many workplaces, social workers and therapists are not the main professions in the hierarchy. We are often supporting professionals, which means we are close enough to see the system clearly, but not always positioned with the power to change it. We often feel the hierarchy while helping others navigate it. And another pattern that I saw repeatedly was this: in organizations where our role was especially not understood, we were often managed by people who didn't truly understand or valued our work. Of course, they wanted our outputs, they wanted our metrics, they wanted our processes, they wanted our demands. And many times we were thinking, that's not our role, though. That's not our job. That's not our role. That's not ethical. That's not clinically appropriate, because our responsibility is to provide care, to be ethical, have safety, and especially have boundaries. Sometimes the people with decision making power knew the least about the work and especially our actual work. So, what happens is that this created unnecessary friction for the people trying to help others. So, what did all of this build within me? Looking back now, every system gave me something. Some places taught me what healthy leadership looked like. Some places taught me what misalignment looked like. Some taught me burnout. I think we all can say a lot of places, unfortunately, especially in the work we do, taught us a lot about burnout. Some taught me about silence. Some taught me about adaptation, especially under pressure. Some taught me how power gets used. And over time, all of that built pattern recognition within me. It helped me with having sharper clinical judgment. It helped me with having systems awareness. It helped me with leadership insight. And it helped me with discernment, especially related to clarity about alignment. Most of all, though, it taught me to ask better questions, not just what is wrong with this person, but what is happening around them. Not just why is this employee struggling, but what conditions are they responding to? Not just how do we fix the symptom, but what is the system? What in the system keeps producing it? That way of thinking became the foundation of the work that I do today. And so, as I close today's episode, I want to say this to anyone who has ever questioned themselves in this work, especially the work that we do. I know that we do really hard. We have a really hard job. And who's ever questioned themselves or made to feel ashamed or felt judged about their non-linear path. Yes, your journey may not have looked traditional. It may have not looked polished. Looking back on mine, I'm like, woof. I've had anybody looking at my LinkedIn will be like, wow, she's jumped around a lot. And I have. And I used to feel bad about it. But now, again, having that experience really allowed me to be where I am right now, to see systems and how misaligned and fractured systems without accountability harm so many people. And we, as the social workers and therapists, unfortunately, we see those people in our work, in our daily sessions, who are coming in to learn how to cope and deal with systems that won't take accountability for their part in harming people. And it may not have made sense to everyone, especially those who choose not to take a linear career path. But that does not mean it was without value. Because sometimes the road that looks messy often teaches us the most. Sometimes movement exposes what staying would have hidden. Sometimes changing environments helps us recognize patterns that we would never have and have so often normalized if you had not have left. Sometimes the path people judge is the path that prepared you the most. Some people build their careers in a straight, linear line, and some people build insight in layers. And sometimes the work you are meant to do can only be built through everything you had to move through first. What some people saw as job hopping, I now understand was training. And as training, it taught me how systems shape people, how leadership impacts well being, how harm gets so normalized, and why helping people sometimes means changing the system too. So that is a conversation, and that is a conversation today for therapy's conversation. So I hope this episode was helpful for anybody, especially in the therapy field and the social work field, who's had a very non-traditional, non-linear career path. And when you have that, you see a lot and use that to your advantage. So that is all I have for this week. And I hope you all do well. I hope you all stay safe. Again, this is your own pathway where therapy conversations are no longer silence and we own it. Take care. I'll see you all next time. Bye.